In this video, Dr. Jordan Peterson explains how you can make your world and others a better place to live in.
So here's a hypothesis. So, one of the things that the New Agers will tell you is that you should follow your bliss. And I have a big problem with that because, first of all, I don't think it's true. And second, because Jung pointed out that if you do follow what you find deeply meaningful, it's likely to take you to a place that you're most afraid of. And so to me, there's a barrier to enlightenment. And the barrier is that you'll face things that will pull you apart before you'll face things that'll put you together. And I think that what you face that will pull you apart is all the things that you've done in the past that have been suboptimal. Those things have to be repaired and fixed. Now, if you put yourself in a situation where you're able to rectify the errors that you've made in the past so that you straighten out the manner in which you're organized, then I think that it might be possible to live so that you're forthrightly confronting things as they move towards you. And if you're oriented towards making them better, like assume that that's your highest value, say, well, what's the purpose of life? And the purpose of life is to make things as good as you can possibly make them. And that might be for you, and it might be for those around you, and you might not even know exactly what that means. So sometimes you're going to have to let go of what you think good is as you progress towards it. Well, it seems to me that if you orient yourself towards that, and you allow yourself to stop living in theories that you know to be false and carrying falsehoods that you're acting out and believing in that you know to be not true, that you can start to live in a different way. So here's the different way in some sense. So the first thing you have to figure out is that you don't know what the hell you're doing. The second thing to figure out, and that's humility, I think. The second thing you have to figure out is what you want. And you either want things to be better or you want them to be worse. And there's reasons for wanting them to be worse. And the reasons are deep and they're justifiable, but they're not helpful. So then let's assume that you notice the part of you that's devoted like Cain to the destruction of things, and you understand what that is, and you're willing to take it onto yourself to repair. Then it isn't other people's evil that you have to worry about, it's your own. Then you might say, well, what should you do next? And one of the pieces of literature from which I've learned from that seems to address that is the Sermon on the Mount in the New Testament. And one thing that happens in the Sermon on the Mount is this. So Christ says to his followers that they should, there isn't something specifically that they should be pursuing. What they should be doing instead is orienting themselves in a particular direction. And the direction would be towards what's best and what's true. So that's the first step, is you figure out, do you want things to be better or do you want them to be worse? That's the fundamental question. So are you working for the betterment of being or for its transformation into hell? And then you think, well, I want things to be better. And then the next thing you think is, well, you don't exactly know how to go about that. Okay, so then what do you do? Well, it seems to me that that's the point at time when you try to eradicate from your field of apprehension everything that you know to be false and unworthy. You get rid of it as much as you can, as fast as you can. And part of the way you can do that is by listening to what you say and watching what you do. And you can listen to what you say and you can find out if you're actually saying what you believe to be true. Now here's a hypothesis. And I think this is the hypothesis that's laid out in the transformation from the Old Testament to the New Testament in Christianity. But I also think it's the same idea that the Taoists were pursuing and the Buddhists were pursuing. So the idea is this, and it's based on the idea of logos. What would happen if instead of pursuing what you think you should be pursuing, you did something else, which is you set yourself in a position where you're trying to make things better, and the next consequence of that is to try to say as clearly as you possibly can what it is that you believe to be true in every situation, and then to see what happens. It's a different way of playing the same game. Now in the Sermon on the Mount, what Christ tells his followers is to orient themselves towards paradise and truth, fundamentally. and then to concentrate on doing everything they possibly can moment to moment as carefully and correctly as possible, and then to see what happens. So there's this ancient idea that's at the root of Western culture that being is spoken into existence, and that's the speech of the logos, and the idea there is also partly that inheres inside people if they're willing to utilize it, and that they know how they can utilize it. And the way to utilize that is to straighten out your speech and action, and to act as well as you can moment to moment, and to let go other than that, and see what happens. And I think that that's the movement of faith that the existentialist Christians continually talk about. You can't, because the thing is, if you're aiming at something specific that constitutes the good, then basically what you've done is made yourself a kind of idol. You said, well, this is paradise in God. But the thing is, you don't know that, because you're not sufficiently informed to understand the ultimate nature of the good. But I think you're sufficiently informed to figure out when you're not using your language properly. And I think one of the things that you can notice is that if you're not using it properly, it makes you ashamed and weak and embarrassed. And I think you can feel that. You can feel it fully embodied. And I think that's what Cain does, and that's what God tells him to stop doing. He says if you're doing things right, you can stand up with your head held high. And if you're not, you can't. You're downcast and angry and resentful and murderous. And I think that that's the case. So, and I do believe that it's a different way of being, because it's not aimed at something that's predefined. You have to allow what constitutes the good and your understanding of the good to continually be updated as you pursue it. And I think all you have to do that is to speak words, well, Northrop Frye would say, is that you have to speak words with power. And I think you can learn to do that. But you have to let go.